Day one of the Democrat convention today, our time. Sure was awkward. US President Joe Biden, a few hours ago, was introduced by his daughter on stage, and he spoke at the convention that is now going to nominate Kamala Harris and not Joe Biden as its candidate in the November election against Donald Trump. Now, Biden, as you know, was forced out for being too old and making the kind of stumbles, well, like this one from his speech just today.
In its decision overturning Roe v. Wade, as you heard earlier tonight, the United States Supreme Court majority wrote the following, quote, "Women are not without electoral or political power."
So the crowd naturally was very grateful to Biden for giving way to Harris, his vice president, instead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, they chanted. It's no wonder then that Biden sounded almost angry as he yelled through a list of his achievements as president, and specifically this one.
Record high stock market, record high 401ks, wages up, inflation down, way down, and continuing to go down.
Now, the trouble with that boast is that Kamala Harris, Biden's vice president, through all that, is now running away from that boast about inflation, trying hard to distance herself from him because she wants to tap into voter anger at the rising cost of living.
A loaf of bread cost 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%. Prices for everyday things like groceries are still too high. You know it and I know it.
So a real clash of messaging there. Joining me is Sean Spicer, who was the first White House spokesman of President Donald Trump. Sean Spicer, thanks for joining us. The Democrat convention, what does Kamala Harris need to happen over these 4 days?
I think it's actually pretty simple. I mean, most Americans, including most Democrats, don't know much about her at all. Those people who watch your show or my show, who are engaged in politics, I think have an understanding of her and what she has not done in her role. But for most Americans, she's a blank slate. And so if you're planning the DNC right now, your goal is to make people believe that she is something that she is not, which is somebody who's fighting hard for the American people, that she's not as extreme on the left as her record suggests. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think part of this is to present somebody who is much more likable and palatable to the American voter.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I noticed Kamala Harris has been leading Donald Trump in national polls. You know, she really has improved the vote since she took over from Joe Biden. But in the past week, I see from Nate Silver's excellent blog that Trump's vote is coming back in many of the battleground states he needs to win. And that seems to coincide with Kamala Harris finally unveiling a couple of policies that are quite left-wing, quite controversial, like price controls on food. I mean, who still argues for that kind of thing? Here she is last Friday, Sean, promising a crackdown on price gouging, or as she called it, price gauging, apparently not knowing what the heck she's talking about, which is actually, when you look at the details, price fixing. Here she is.
I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
Now, is this how Trump could beat Harris? By focusing on her record and particularly her policies instead of these personal attacks?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, he's got a great record to contrast with her. What was happening in this country during his tenure and the result of his policies. But I think there are two important things about the comment that she just made. Number one, Andrew, she is the vice president right now. They call it the Biden-Harris administration because they're supposedly partners. So it begs the question, why haven't you done it yet? I think that's, and if she were to engage with the press, which she doesn't, I would hope that that question would come up. I mean, that to me is the simplest thing. The second thing that I find fascinating about this, and believe me, there's a lot more, but these are just the top two. The second thing, though, is this is like an arsonist trying to take credit for putting out a fire that they started. It was their policies that created inflation throughout this country, that drove the cost of living through the roof for so many people on essential things like food, bacon and eggs and milk and things like that, the essentials. They went through the roof. And now she's talking about, well, we need to have price gouging, whatever she wants to call it. The reality is, how about we just stop the bad policies that are creating these inflationary tools that are wreaking havoc on our economy? But it is unbelievable that she gets away with this, because you have to say to yourself, why are you waiting till day one when your office is in the West Wing of the White House? Why have you not done it? Where is the partnership? You've championed Joe Biden in his policies, right? She keeps talking about how great Bidenomics is. Well, if it's that great, then why isn't it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Why do we need a new day one when you've been there for, 3 years?
Well, it's interesting you say press scrutiny. Again, Kamala Harris, which has been there now a month, has not given, as candidate, that is, Democrat candidate, she hasn't given a single press conference or an interview with a journalist in all that time. But she and her very weird running mate, Governor Tim Walz, very much left-wing, incredibly so, they've responded to this criticism, Sean, by interviewing each other with hard questions like this.
Like I have white guy tacos and
what is
like
that?
black,
like mayonnaise and tuna? What are you doing?
pretty much ground beef and cheese.
That's
and,
okay. Do you put any flavor in it?
No.
Oh.
Here's the deal. No, they said to be careful and let her know this, that black pepper is the top of the spice level in Minnesota.
Sean, how long can they get away with this?
First of all, I find that like kind of cringy and disgusting. I mean, I'm 52. I've been a white guy my whole life, and I didn't know there were white guy tacos. So I feel like I've been left out of a whole food category. But secondly, I find this kind of just odd. They talk about the fact that they will sit down at the appropriate time, but they have time to make these videos. The weird part about this is I actually think that these things do them more harm than if they actually sat down and talked policy, because people watch the videos like that and go, yeah, you guys are weird.
Apparently, if you want to be a volunteer on the Kamala Harris campaign, you have to nominate your pronouns from a list. They've got, I think, about 9 different options, not just he and her and they and all that kind of stuff, but weird ones that I haven't heard of, G and Z, and I can't even pronounce all these ones. 9 different ones, including ones indicating that, for instance, you're gender fluid, but not including men at all. It's just crazy. What does this suggest to you?
Well, the funny thing is, these are the folks that use the moniker weird to describe Trump and Vance. And to your point, I saw that same list, Andrew, outside of he and him, she and her, and they and them, which, again, how ridiculous is it that you're calling a singular person they? That sounds more like they need help from some kind of personality disorder more than anything else. I didn't know the other ones, though. I'm with you. I was kind of looking down that list going, I can't pronounce them, never mind understand them. But it just goes to show that
where I was.
I was like, okay.
I had to look them up. I had to actually go and look them up. Apparently, I'm going to help you out that hoo-hoo means you're human focused. But I don't know. I thought, look, I don't get it either, Sean.
Okay, and by the way, they want to use the word weird when you have to say that you have a pronoun that means you're human focused. I mean, honest to God, what is going on here where we're sitting here saying you're human focused? I think, again, that's a problem. Who are you? What would be the alternative? That it's like a bestiality thing? I don't understand. The idea that we're catering to that really speaks to where we are, politically speaking, where they are. And the idea that they get away with calling other people weird, to me, is kind of nuts.